Marcus Rashford and Jude Bellingham collided in the tunnel after England's defeat to Ghana, and police were called to the stadium. It wasn't just a heated exchange. It wasn't a shove that got broken up in seconds. It wasn't the usual dressing room friction that gets swept under the carpet. This is serious. Nothing like this has ever happened in an England camp days before World Cup knockout football. And there's a detail the FA is still trying to contain publicly. A mobile phone captured footage that's now circulating among staff members. And the worst hasn't even come to light yet. Over the next few minutes, you'll understand exactly what happened in that tunnel, the months of tension that led to it, and why this fracture could reshape England's entire campaign at the 2026 World Cup. When something like this explodes in a World Cup squad, it's not just about two players losing their temper. This is about dressing room unity, about whether Thomas Tuchel can hold his authority together, about team selection, and who plays in the matches that matter. The behind the scenes of this is far worse than what you've read in the headlines, because the tensions building beneath the surface had been simmering for weeks. Let's rewind to the match itself. England faced Ghana in what was supposed to be a routine fixture, but it became the spark that ignited everything. Marcus Rashford, more than 50 goals for England across multiple tournaments, had been rotated in recent matches under Tuchel's new tactical system. The manager has emphasized defensive solidity and midfield control, and that philosophy meant less attacking freedom for senior strikers. Rashford's minutes had been managed, his positioning questioned in training, and his influence on the pitch had dimmed compared to what England's fans were used to. Jude Bellingham, meanwhile, had become the centerpiece of Tuchel's midfield architecture. The young midfielder's role expanded with every passing week. More creative license, more responsibility for ball progression, and increasingly more of a vocal presence directing teammates during play. That's when the tension started showing cracks. During the first half against Ghana, England's attack was sluggish. Rashford had touches but no rhythm, no penetration. Bellingham was everywhere, covering space, dictating tempo, occasionally correcting teammates' positioning on the pitch. What people didn't see was what happened in quiet moments. Sources close to the camp assure us that Bellingham had begun adopting a more commanding tone in training sessions, sometimes overstepping into territory that senior players like Rashford traditionally controlled. When a young midfielder, even one as talented as Bellingham, starts correcting attacking options without being asked, it registers differently in the dressing room than when a veteran does it. Bukayo Saka was there during these moments, and witnesses say he noticed the tension building between them. But nobody expected what came next. The final whistle blew. Ghana had equalized, and England's attacking display had been unconvincing. Players filed toward the tunnel, moving in clusters, still processing the disappointment. That's when Marcus Rashford and Jude Bellingham passed near the equipment racks in that corridor beneath the stadium. According to information circulating among staff, an exchange began immediately. Words about who was playing the game wrong, about work ethic, about positioning in the final third. Bellingham allegedly responded with something about seniority not mattering when you're out of touch tactically. That's when Bellingham stepped closer. Rashford didn't back away. There was a hand on the chest. Bellingham pushed back. Both players squared up, and for a moment that felt suspended in time, chest contact was made. Real contact, not theatrical. Saka moved in immediately. Declan Rice, England's midfield leader and a natural peacemaker, rushed over and positioned himself between them. Staff members were shouting. Other players formed a semicircle, watching in silence. Then Thomas Tuchel appeared at the dressing room door, his face completely rigid. Security moved in and separated Rashford and Bellingham, both of them breathing hard, eyes still locked on each other across the distance that had just opened up between them. The incident was serious enough that local law enforcement was alerted by stadium security. No formal complaint was filed, but police attended the scene and spoke with FA officials and Tuchel himself. That detail alone tells you how far this had escalated beyond a typical dressing room row. And hold on, because the most controversial detail I've saved for the end. A coaching staff member allegedly captured roughly 30 seconds of video on a mobile phone before security locked down the tunnel area. That footage has not been released publicly, but sources indicate it exists, and it's circulating among senior FA personnel and coaching staff behind closed doors. The footage apparently shows the chest contact and the intensity of the confrontation more clearly than anyone outside the immediate circle realizes. Now, this didn't come out of nowhere. The tensions between Rashford and Bellingham had been building for months, but they represented something much larger, a power struggle between competing philosophies in the England squad. On one side, you have Rashford and the senior players arguing that experience and proven tournament credentials have to be trusted in crucial moments, that rotation and tactical experiments destabilize rhythm and confidence. On the other side, you have Bellingham and the younger generation contending that Tuchel's system requires athletes willing to work the blueprint without ego, younger hunger and adaptability, and the willingness to evolve beyond old hierarchies. Harry Kane, England's captain and senior striker, was watching from a distance. Kane has shared a dressing room with both players across multiple tournaments, and his silence in the immediate aftermath spoke volumes. People close to Kane say he understands Rashford's frustration, but also recognizes that Bellingham's tactical discipline aligns with what Tuchel needs. That put Kane in an impossible middle position, caught between loyalty to a veteran peer and the reality that the team's structure is changing. Declan Rice, who moved in to separate them, has a track record of being the peacemaker in England camps. But even Rice's influence couldn't prevent what happened next. The dressing room split visibly in the hours following the incident. Younger players like Ebereki Eze and Anthony Gordon were reportedly concerned about what Bellingham's credibility meant if Tuchel didn't respond with discipline. Veteran defenders like John Stones and Mark Guehi remained quiet but sympathetic to Rashford's right to question tactical decisions. The coaching staff went silent, waiting for Tuchel to move. The FA immediately launched a confidential review. They were terrified of public fallout weeks before knockout football. The press erupted into wild speculation. Some outlets framed it as Tuchel losing control of the dressing room, a manager who couldn't handle strong personalities. Other reports suggested this was necessary friction in a high-stakes tournament, that elite squads sometimes need these moments to reset. On social media, fans split into camps. Some defended Rashford as a senior player who'd earned the right to speak up about tactics. Others argued that Bellingham represented the future and that ego had no place in a World Cup squad fighting for qualification. Now, Thomas Tuchel is caught between two impossible decisions. If he publicly disciplines or benches Rashford, he risks sending a signal that senior voices get shut down, that manager authority trumps squad harmony. And that could alienate other veterans and damage morale heading into knockout matches. But if he takes no visible action, Bellingham's credibility as a tactical leader crumbles, younger players lose faith in the hierarchy, and discipline dissolves across the entire camp. If he suspends both players, England loses attacking and midfield options at a moment when depth matters. The clock is ticking. squad selection decisions have to be made within 48 hours for England's next fixture. The FA requires formal findings from their confidential review within a similar window. Every hour that passes without clarity adds pressure to an already fractured environment. Sources close to Tuchel's inner circle say the manager spent the night reviewing footage and speaking individually with players who witnessed the incident. His preference, according to what's being said behind the scenes, is to handle this quietly, a serious conversation with both players, some form of internal sanction that doesn't become public, and a unified front presented to the media. But that approach only works if Rashford and Bellingham can genuinely move forward. And right now, they're not even in the same mental space. What happened in that tunnel has changed the entire tone of England's World Cup campaign. The narrative has shifted from tactical analysis to squad cohesion. Sponsors and media partners are asking difficult questions. Fans are divided between those who see this as a necessary recalibration and those who see it as proof that Tuchel's system is already fracturing under pressure. This is far from over. This is the information circulating right now, but over the next few hours and days, new details are going to drip out. More footage might surface, audio recordings of what was actually said could leak, player statements could emerge, and they could reshape this entire story. The weight of what happened in that tunnel is that England went from being a unified squad ready for knockout football to a team questioning its own internal structure. Over to you. Is this the necessary friction of a World Cup squad under pressure, or has Tuchel lost control of his dressing room? Write it down below. And if you don't want to find out about the next bombshell after everyone else, subscribe and turn on notifications now. Because when this fully blows up, you'll want to be the first to know, not the last. But here's where it gets even darker, because what happened after the tunnel incident reveals the full scale of the damage. Reports started filtering out within hours. Players began receiving calls from agents, from family members who'd seen social media speculation. The story went global before the FA could even draft an official statement. Marcus Rashford's representatives were preparing a response, sources suggest, while Jude Bellingham's camp went silent. A tactical choice that spoke volumes. The uncertainty itself became the weapon, and every hour without clarity made the fracture wider. Inside the squad, the atmosphere shifted to something almost unbearable. Training the next morning was tense. Declan Rice tried to hold things together, but even his influence has limits when two elite players aren't willing to look at each other. Jordan Pickford, England's goalkeeper and a veteran presence, was reportedly approached by coaching staff to help stabilize the mood. Harry Kane had private conversations with both Rashford and Bellingham separately, trying to find common ground that might not exist. Reece James and John Stones, defensive leaders, were watching carefully. They knew that if this rift spreads to the back line, the entire defensive structure collapses under tournament pressure. The thing is, Tuchel's tactical system depends on harmony between the attack and midfield. When that channel breaks, everything breaks. Bukayo Saka and Anthony Gordon were reportedly anxious about how this affects their minutes and positioning. Ebereki Eze, who thrives in Tuchel's midfield blueprint, was caught between supporting Bellingham's tactical discipline and respecting Rashford's seniority. Morgan Rogers and Kobbie Mainoo, younger midfielders competing for playing time, suddenly found themselves watching a power struggle that could reshape the entire pecking order. What's being said behind the scenes is that Tuchel considered dropping both players for the next fixture as a way to reset the narrative and send a message about discipline. But that option carries enormous risk. Benching Marcus Rashford, a striker with more than 50 goals for England, sends a signal that even senior players can be cast aside mid-tournament. Benching Jude Bellingham removes the tactical anchor of the entire midfield system Tuchel has built. Drop both, and you're essentially telling the squad that infighting results in erasure, which might deter future conflicts, but it also removes two of your best options heading into knockout stages where you need every advantage. The FA's confidential review became a pressure cooker. Officials were in constant contact with Tuchel, with security, with witnesses. The footage that exists, that 30-second mobile phone video, became the central piece of evidence. What it showed, according to sources with knowledge of the incident, was undeniable physical contact and genuine aggression, not theatrical posturing. That reality made any lenient response look like weakness, and any harsh response look like the manager couldn't control elite personalities. Social media, meanwhile, had already split into warring camps. Rashford's supporters pointed to his trophy record, his maturity in previous tournaments, his right to question tactics as a senior voice. Bellingham's defenders talked about progress, about the future, about refusing to let ego undermine collective strategy. Neutral observers argued that both players had valid perspectives, but that the medium, a physical confrontation in a public space, had crossed the line beyond repair. The debate became inescapable. Every England fan was forced to choose a side, and that polarization bled into the dressing room itself. Now, as England prepares for the next match, the question isn't really about tactics anymore. It's about whether Tuchel can restore order without losing the confidence of either the veteran leadership or the emerging generation. It's about whether Marcus Rashford can accept a reduced role in the system without festering resentment. It's about whether Jude Bellingham can exercise leadership without arrogance. And it's about whether Declan Rice, Harry Kane, Jordan Pickford, and the rest of the squad can genuinely move past what they saw in that tunnel. The weight of this moment is that England's World Cup campaign is no longer about winning football matches. It's about surviving itself. What happens in the next 48 hours? Tuchel's decision, the FA's findings, whether either player makes a public statement, will determine whether this becomes a cautionary tale or a turning point. The clock is ticking toward kickoff, and every second that passes without resolution adds pressure to a squad already fracturing under the weight of expectations. This is far from over. The information circulating right now suggests more details will emerge. Audio recordings might surface, additional witnesses may speak, player statements could reshape the entire narrative. Over to you. Is Tuchel handling an impossible situation with necessary ruthlessness, or has he lost control of the squad at precisely the moment England needed unity most? Write it down below. And if you don't want to miss what happens next, subscribe and turn on notifications, because when this story breaks wide open, you'll want to be watching in real time, not finding out after everyone else.